The Machiavellian Boss, continuation in our Neurotypical Watch series, where I'm exposing my autistic audience to some of the extreme interactions that I've had in my life to better prepare you for your life. Obviously, here I'm exposing some of the worst of socially acceptable behavior, maybe even some of mine, so that you can understand what happens in these um, tight interactions that go on between people. Understanding the worst will help you navigate life so that you're not navigating on the backside of the map. Um, I am putting neurotypicals and autistics at odds with one another. Even from the entry scene, you can see that it's largely tongue in cheek or meant that way, anyways. Um, Strictly speaking, it's inappropriate. Even the choice of wording is wrong. If you want to put autistics at odds with everyone else, then the terminology would be allistic, autistics and allistics. Neurotypicals, um, those sets are not so exclusive and discrete of one another, um, because obviously autistics can suffer from Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy, and all the other mental health conditions to varying degrees. Um, so, I mean, it is inappropriate, but as I've said, enough has been said about autism by neurotypicals that I think they can stand to take a little bear poke back. So I'm going to show you a video of an interaction with my former boss, almost former partner, near the end of this, and I'll give you a bit of a description at the beginning. I joined this company, call it Pilot, um, which is an engineering consultancy. I joined them as a 1099 contracting engineer, working in as an associate. So I'm not an employee, I'm a contractor, subcontractor, which may sound intimidating to some because there's a lack of job security. Uh, Honestly, I've very much enjoyed it because with given the strength of my skill set, I enjoy a high rate of pay and the ability to move on very easily from one place to another. Normally, anyways. Um, and if you are an autistic working in your specialty subject, this type of approach may work well for you. It's risky, a little bit more risky, you would think. But honestly, if a W-2 employee thinks he's got better job security than a contractor that can actually do his or her job, he or she may be deluding themselves. What I do have to warn you against is engineering consultancies. There's, um, in addition to all the regular pressures at normal companies, there's this pressure with the customer, which sort of conspires against doing a good job sometimes, doing good engineering, which is frustrating. Then on top of that, the interpersonal stressors are much greater than they are in a normal company, and there's usually some degree of Machiavellianism at these companies. So if you do happen to take such a job on, I would never decline the next job offer that came along, if I were you. So I joined them 2.5 years ago, and things were going really well. Halfway through, I said, "Hey, I'm working on this technology that I've created, and I've patented it. Do you guys want to work together on it?" And the owner, Roger, said, "This isn't really worth my time right now." Um, and then the director, John, who I report to, I think convinced him to take 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 this project on. So we entered an agreement, and I have it shown here on the screen. Um, you can pause to read it if you want. What's critical is the areas shown in green. The first green area says Pilot assigns ownership over all copyrights, trade secrets, patents, and intellectual property related to EMCP technology to my company. Pilot will deliver all EMCP documents to my company on request forthwith. This agreement explicitly denies the transfer of any intellectual property from my company to Pilot as it relates to EMCP. Now, nowhere in there does it say anything about parts and prototypes. You think by extension that that would apply automatically, but that's actually the crux to the dispute in this video of this interaction that I'm going to show. The second part says, green part says, the parties recognize that this agreement is relying on trust between the parties to cover many details that are not specifically covered in this agreement. This means that the parties each believe that the other party is looking out for the best interests of both parties, as well as suppliers and the client. Now, as I said, this company was a good place to work, a friendly environment, not a lot of backstabbing, almost none actually. So I was lulled into ease, and I was a little bit concerned with it, but I didn't bother to raise any wake over it. So I let it go through and signed. Later on, you'll see that the use of the word trust starts to become important in more ways than one. Now, this is a layman's contract. You would think having a lawyer write it would be better, but honestly, and I say it's true, but the problem is that the lawyer is never going to anticipate all the problems that could arise, or probably isn't going to be able to. And so spending a lot of money, at least at this juncture, on a lawyer didn't make a lot of sense. Now, that, in retrospect, may have been a mistake on my part. So you can see from the construction of this contract, Pilot is in a position where it receives money. It's entitled to receive the profits from the funding, and then obviously there's an obligation to invest it in the technology. So we did successfully apply for a grant and receive $250,000 in military funding. And right off the bat, they started talking about taking $100,000 of it and recognizing it as profit. So the word trust was thrown around here, that we have to show trust. Everyone has to trust one another, and it began to frustrate me that they were using trust in this way so that they can do a distrustful thing and take this money inappropriately rather than investing it in R&D. So I went on the warpath and barked, snarled, and snapped. And they changed their tack, and we actually were very successful in what we built. The analysis we did in the military was very interested in our technology, my technology. As you can see, I own it. But the owner his choice of language continually focused on him and his company being in control of things. Not so much to cause actual upset, but enough to cause alarm. Anyways, at the end of September 2025, they laid me off for the first time because there was no funded projects to pay for me. Normally they pay half hours in order to keep me on. I mean, I can't afford to only be available to them exclusively when they want. So normally they pay me half hours, but they stopped doing that in this case, which was fine, but a little bit irregular. And so the anticipation was that I would be going back to work within a month. The announcement was expected to come out by November, and when the announcement came out, I would go back to work. But this is 2025, and Congress shut down. So November came and nothing was happening. It was very clear that this was going to go on protracted. Now, it only went on for another month, but I started actually looking for another job because I was worried that, well, there's no guarantee of award. And then on top of that, it could easily come 8 months or a year or later, and at that point I might be bankrupt. So I started applying for jobs, and I had 3 or 4 interviews, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't getting the job, and I was pretty put off because it's never happened to me before. So I called the director, John, and said, "Hey, I'm not being able to find a job here. Is Pilot blocking me?" And his direct response to that was, he's worried he'll have to find a new job, or they're worried they'll have to find jobs afterwards. And to flesh that out, pilot had no other business in the pipeline other than the possibly two grants, $10 million and $2 million that might come through for this invention. So they've laid me off, they've deprived me of an income, and they appear to be blocking me from finding new employment so that I can sustain myself during the layoff. Probably anticipating that it'll only be a few months, but that actually has gone on quite long. Unfortunately, at the same time, they started saying things like, well, we're probably not going to invest in some of the technology you've identified. We're going to use something simpler, as if they were the ones to make the choice about what the technology would be, and as if they had the authority to go against the proposal, which is actually fraud, and as if they had the authority to make the choice without me. And again, it's starting to sound like they're trying to realize R&D dollars as profit. So I got upset, and I hired a lawyer. And this is now December, and the lawyer reaches out to them, and their position was they don't want to talk about it until the grant announcement comes through. And so that was unacceptable to me. But I can't force a horse to drink water. So I barked at them, but nothing happened. And then January passes, February passes, March comes, and finally Congress passes this Small Business Innovation Reward funding. But at this point, my finances are hurting badly, so the relationship is frayed. But we started talking again anyways, and we set up a Teams meeting, and the owner, Roger, right before it, sent out an email saying, I don't want to talk about the plans for the grant. I just want to have a social talk. So at this point, I'm laid off for 6 or 7 months, and he's playing keep away and trying to frustrate me, in my opinion. So then I started to make a calculus. Something has to happen here. I'm being treated very badly, in my opinion, and should I even be working with these people, frankly? So I sent out an email, which you can see here, to one of the grant applications and said, here's the contract. I have authority to refuse any third-party contracts. I request the grant be canceled. And so then they got upset. They finally hired a lawyer. Not when I hired the lawyer. They hired a lawyer only because they were upset. Not to try and negotiate things, but simply to threaten me with slander or libel. And they sent a letter to my lawyer, and then my lawyer responded back to my prompting and said, he's just expressing an opinion. He's just saying it appears that they have laid me off, and it appears that they're blocking me from finding employment, and it also appears that they're trying to realize R&D dollars as profit. And of course, the word appear is a lawyer weasel word, which softens a factual statement into an opinion. And the statement of opinion is an absolute defense. If it's not the case in any way, then there's no defense against slander or libel. So far as I understand, I'm not a lawyer here. So they were deterred from that, and they didn't file suit. And I let a few more weeks pass, and I finally said, okay, the relationship isn't improving. So I sent out basically the same email and said, okay, second grant, I request that this be canceled for the same reasons. Then the lawyer got really upset again and called my lawyer, and nothing happened. So I made a demand for the return of the prototype with the promise to return their laptop. And Roger responds back and says, as you can see here, That said, all the EMCP prototype parts in my possession were paid for by Pilot, not by the US government, by Pilot. These parts are Pilot property. Please return the Pilot computer that is now in your possession. So he's playing keep away again, trying to frustrate me. This is, from what I've observed, this is what he does in some of his business relationships. He even took a similar approach to the granting authority that came to visit us on the technology the granting authority was trying to build. So it's just mindless how he does this sort of thing. The point is to frustrate the other party so that they don't feel in control. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to keep the Pilot laptop because that'll just get me in some sort of legal trouble. So I drove the Pilot laptop over to Pilot, dropped it off, and then had this video conversation with Roger, as you can see. Now, observe while you're watching this, the timbre of my voice, the staccato pace, the volume. I don't think I actually was yelling, though he could detect my upset. But people in this type of situation will accuse you of lying, or not lying, yelling for just this sort of behavior on my part. What happens is they equate you being angry with yelling, so that there's more of a cause of action against you, or just socially or legally, for your anger based on their behavior. So what I should have done, I had a prescription for propranolol, which is a blood pressure regulator. It's an ACE inhibitor, but it's used for people with performance anxiety. And it does actually a really good job at regulating heart rate, which I found is actually exceptional for me when I'm going into upsetting situations. Performance-enhanced argumentation, if you will. So, as a trick for anger management, if this sort of thing is your problem, consider getting a propranolol prescription, even just on a discretionary basis, 10 to 30 milligrams at your doctor's consent, on a discretionary basis for situational circumstances, right, on your discretion. So here's the video. Let's have a watch. Hey, Chuck. Not bad. Acknowledge receipt, please. Thank you. Oh, hi, Roger. Yeah, unfortunately, our agreement says there's no other agreements in force for UMCP, so your assertions that I was your associate at the time are incorrect, and it is actually my property.
How so?
Roger, it was purchased with funds that were given to you in trust for Cool Mechatronics.
Okay, so the contract was to Pilot. Pilot paid for it. And
Pilot did not pay for it. The U.S. government paid for it.
Okay,
with
understood.
funds that were given in trust. You get those money in trust, Roger.
Relax for a second. So, I don't know what you think you mean by in trust. Jordan, keep it simple here.
Give me the prototype back. Let's sever our agreement. We're done.
I can't do that.
You can do that, Roger.
No, I can't, because the contract says at some point the government could come back and say, hey, you know those prototypes that you made under your SBIR?
You're lying through your teeth, Roger. You're lying through your teeth right now. You're just making that up.
I'm talking to Eric Meyer, I'm talking to John, I'm talking to people who know how these
Your
contracts work.
participation with EMCP is done now. John knows nothing about this. He's learning at the same pace that we are right now. You and I are.
Those parts are the possession. The ownership is Pilot.
No.
Why not?
Roger, because you assigned all intellectual property to me.
Well, first of all, I don't know that all intellectual, I didn't assign
You
it.
did, Roger. In the contract, you explicitly say, assign all intellectual property to me.
So how, so intellectual property, that, that does not include parts.
That's something that device is being used for development right now. It's not a piece of junk.
No.
It's not being used for commercial purposes. It is intellectual property because I need it to develop the technology. And even if that's not the case, Roger, you're splitting hairs and you're trying to take control over something that doesn't belong to you.
I paid for it.
You didn't pay for it. The U.S. government paid for it, Roger.
Okay, that's like saying Ford Motor Company.
You got the money in trust. We signed an agreement. You get money to help me build the IP.
Interested in having a conversation.
No, Roger, because you keep just saying the same thing, and it's just not the case. It's your money. It's your money. It's not your money.
You're walking.
I want to end our agreement. I want to end our agreement. If you want to keep the prototype, then we'll deal with that in court. But I would like to come to an agreement right now or later where we end your profit sharing and you end your entitlement to receive R&D funds.
Why would I do that?
Because I don't want to deal with you anymore. You're a sleazy piece of snake.
You know, the other thing that's interesting here, Jordan, is somehow you ran into 20 people, 30 people that know me in the process of working with me.
Roger.
Not one of them has the same opinion you do. How did that happen?
Well, because none of them are in the same position that I'm in, where I'm both your associate and I'm your partner, and you're in control of whether I find a new job or not, and you're refusing to talk to me about EMCP for 8 months now. You have refused to talk about this subject.
Conversation, please lower your tone. Let's be calm and be professional.
Well, how about we have this conversation with your lawyer then? And my lawyer.
You want to get both lawyers involved?
Yes, Roger, because I don't want to deal with you. You've refused to speak to my lawyer. You refused to speak to me. It's been 8 months.
We've spoken to your lawyer a couple of times.
Roger, you refused to have a substantive discussion on the topic. You refused to talk about, I have a recording of you in that last meeting, that last Teams meeting we had, where you said you're not, and an email from you where you say you're going to refuse to talk about EMCP. So you can't now, until it's on your terms. But I'm telling you now that until where the money comes, it's never going to happen because you're never going to get it because I'm never going to give you permission to have it.
Okay,
so I want to end our agreement.
So send me a document that describes how you envision ending the agreement, and I'll consider it.
You'll consider it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the other alternative is for me to go to court and use all the documentation, everything I have right now, and have you severed, and also sue you personally for all the damages that I've suffered.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Understood. Have a good day. So after this video, I went home and chose to forward Roger's email on to the funding agencies, and you can see that on the screen here. Roger then replies back to all and says, I apologize for the email below. Now, the email below what is his apology? Is he apologizing for my terrible, terrible behavior? Is he apologizing for the email he sent? There's ambiguity in this. But he's starting to get cornered with his bad behavior, and there's starting to be proof of what he's about. Now, had I been smart, and given the level of importance this has to me, this is my early retirement, basically. This is what I've been working on and investing in rather than saving for retirement. This is my early retirement, and I should have been taking better steps at documenting what was going on. So honestly, I should have had in every in-person meeting, I should have had this audio recording device with me. This is like a $20, $30 audio recorder. It's great. And every Teams meeting, I should have been recording every Teams meeting. And every phone call, I should have been recording that. When you hit the call button on your cell phone, there's a record in the bottom right hand corner. So when people call in, um, there's a, it's not going to show unless I call. On your Android phone, at least, you can just hit the record on the call screen. So I should have been doing that at every step during this, and it would have been a lot easier to prove what was going on, again, given the level of importance this had to me. So you can see now, again, this is an extreme. This isn't going to happen every day in your life. Obviously, I made the mistake here of mixing my work life with my private inventive life. So I put this Roger guy in control to a large degree of my invention. Not only that, I put him in control of my finances, because every employer, at least in the engineering world, is going to call your last employer and say, hey, what's up? Now, in my experience, if they say, hey, we had a lot of friction with this guy, he's a great engineer, but he may be a bit of a jerk, in our opinion, that will not stop you from getting a job. What will stop you from getting a job is saying, oh yeah, he's a great engineer, but he's got a project, a funded project that's coming up, and he's going to be coming right back. We're just not sure when it's going to be. It might be in a month or so. No one's going to hire then. And that's the circumstances I've been. I've been unemployed now for 7-8 months, and my finances are going into the gutter. So, what should I have? Should I have done something differently? Let's look at this. Let's look at my mistake. Could I have forbeared more and just waited for the grant to come through, and then maybe sue them and try to separate them from the profits? I could have done that and waited. Unfortunately, this is a month after. This video right now is being recorded a month after what I just showed you, and there's no sign of any grant coming through. And I don't know that I can afford to wait anymore. I need a job. So I need to bring this to an end. So different people will have different risk profiles. I'm of the mind that in this situation, if someone tries to ruin you, either intentionally or simply through lack of care, or some mixture of the two, you should probably never do business or bring them back into your life again. So at the same time I'm recording this video, I'm working on a video about misassuming intent. Given the negativity of this vlog that I've had, it's very easy in life to misassume a villainous intent on the part of others. So that is going to be an important video for you to watch after this one. I don't know. So my mistakes and his behavior are on full display for your analysis and consideration in your own life. What would you do in these circumstances?